Howdy folks. Recently I put an MP3 recording in this training section entitled, I believe, One of Those Things. It was my attempt to use that usual resistant answer, turning it around a little bit and suggesting a way to handle that and maybe potentially in time turn it into a positive. More specifically, to give you some positive posture about how not to be put off by that sort of initial facade. I want to follow through on that with another story along those exact same lines. Years ago, I was asked to be the chair of the World Federation of Direct Selling Associations. Sounds all very exciting. Basically the UN of direct selling, and was involved in setting up the DSA in Poland and a few other bits and pieces around the world. But the one significant role I played in the 2 terms that I was there was in taking the point on behalf of the World Federation as well as the US Direct Selling Association with, we'll call it negotiations. Really wasn't that. I was a deal taker with the People's Republic of China for their direct selling regulations around the year 2003, 4, 5. Great experience. Now, previous to me, little old me, the chairs of that World Federation of Direct Selling Associations had always been from Avon or Amway. They alternated. These are the big 800-pound gorillas, if you will, in our space, and they took turns going back and forth. They had all tried, and I was the first one from outside of that cabal to take that role. Now, in their roles, as they'd done it, taken turns doing it, in trying to negotiate with China to get better direct selling regulations, they'd always gone through what I call the official channels. They'd always had their chief legal counsel contact the State Department, who contacted the embassy, who contacted the Ministry of Commerce in the People's Republic of China, or they engaged the big-time law firm in China and used the expat white guy to go and find some contact there, and were spectacularly unsuccessful because they did, in my opinion, they did it in the exact wrong way, contrary to how we do this business and how we've proven that this business works. The big half-page advertisement in USA Today isn't the way you recruit. The big official approach isn't the way you create attraction to you and engage in conversations. It isn't the way you form relationships from which can flow transactions. So I don't have contacts in the State Department or the West Wing of the White House or big-time $800 an hour law firm. I'm just little old me. And so I reached out to some Chinese folks that I knew in both Taiwan and Malaysia, who I knew had connections back into the mainland. Long story short, 5 degrees of separation, I managed to get myself an appointment with Mr. Deng, who was the Vice Minister in the People's Republic of China Department of Commerce. He wasn't necessarily the head, but he was the lead in terms of the promulgation of the direct selling regulations. Get myself to Beijing, go in through the checkpoint, into their Ministry of Commerce greeting room. It's these big, large, well-appointed rooms where they meet foreign dignitaries. You've seen them on TV when various embassies or secretaries of state or whatever do their meet and greet. Little old me sitting there with my translator. In comes Mr. Deng's translator and says, Mr. Deng will be with you in 5 minutes. I'm kind of anxious, looking out the window across Tiananmen Square to a big picture of Chairman Mao, and I'm thinking to myself, I am not in New Zealand anymore. This is a different ball game I'm playing here. I'm anxious. Mr. Deng breezes on in. His translator stands up to attention, all of this protocol stuff. I stand up, greet him, shake his hand. He didn't look too happy and proceeded, his look was indicative, proceeded to tell me that he had, out of a favor to his friend, given me this audience, and we had 30 minutes. Very stern, very brusque, very matter of fact. And then proceeded to take the next 25 minutes to lecture me in Chinese through his translator on how direct selling and our industry and therefore our company and me specifically were the devil. If you picture the movie Mulan, which I think they're remaking in a live action version, I'm looking forward to that. Their vision of me and of us was we were the Han coming over the wall. We were going to overtake their villages and towns. They were nervous about meetings because, of course, the Communist Party understands the power of small village meetings that grow to large movements. They were nervous about Farmer Joe selling his cow and his chicken to buy the product, to move to town to be rich in 3 months and then becoming unsuccessful, and the social unrest that would cause. How were they going to tax these people that weren't receiving their money through official channels? Blah, blah, blah. Basically made me feel like a complete schmuck and a heel, and began to wonder, am I going to get out of here alive, or am I going to get out of here at all? But after 25 minutes, he took a breath, so did his translator, and basically intimated it was my turn. And I said to him, just like I coached you on the one of those things video, I said, Mr. Deng, I'm sorry. I'm genuinely sorry. If my experience with our industry had been that, I would have the exact same perception as you have. But if I may, let me share with you just a few examples of how a good industry, built on solid principles, well personified, can actually be a blessing in people's lives. And proceeded to tell him about Kasano-san in Japan that used to pump gas or officially be a fuel transfer technician at his father-in-law's gas station, and now drives his Ferrari into that gas station, married with a daughter and a wonderful, happy life. Or Mr. Nagano-san that used to sleep under a blue tarp in Shinjuku Park and now actually can pay some rent and has his own house. Or so-and-so's mother-in-law that had given up living because she was just so sick and tired and sick and tired and didn't want to leave the house. And after cleanse and a bit of weight loss and energy revival, she was able to come to a meeting and give me a big old Fräulein hug and say, thank you, thank you, thank you. And other people have had wonderful positive experience by association, by product, by economics, by the gestalt of what we do. I said, Mr. Deng, that's my perception of our business. I apologize on behalf of all those who have personified this business poorly. They do not represent me, my company, or our industry. We can do better. Thought, well, that was about as bold as I could get. He stood up and walked out. And his translator followed. And I'm like, turned to my translator and said, are we done here? Do we leave? Do we wait? What do we do? And he and I were just communicating back and forth. And he said, well, let's just wait a moment, see what's going on. A few minutes later, Mr. Deng's translator came back in and said, do you mind waiting? Mr. Deng will be back in a moment. I said, sure, that's fine. A few minutes later, Mr. Deng came back in, sat down in the same chair, and then two things happened. Number one, he started speaking English. Much more productive conversation. We don't have to go through third-party translators. And then we began a 3-hour dialogue on the pros and cons and pluses and minuses and how this could be done, this industry could be done in the People's Republic of China. They guided their people very closely. They wanted to make sure they weren't doing anything disrespectful or dangerous or risky for themselves, obviously, and the plurocracy, as well as for their people. Wonderful, engaging conversation. Long story short, I don't think I changed any of the direct selling regulations that ultimately came out. They came out not ideal, not great, not really what we would have liked, but some progress in the right direction. I don't know if that conversation or the subsequent conversations had anything to do with that. The other was I began a great friendship with Mr. Deng. Turns out his son loved baseballs. Every time I was back in China, I would bring a baseball glove or something baseball-ish from the US. He loved it. Unfortunately, about 18 months later, he was diagnosed with cancer, and I visited him in hospital a few times, and he passed away, and a good friendship came to an end, at least in this sphere. I got to know Mr. Deng. He got to know me. He got to know me as a personification of our industry. But it taught me this lesson, and that's what I tried to communicate to you, and I apologize for doing it inartfully, that yes, people want what we have when we personify it well and when we quietly, confidently explain the fundamental principles that we operate under and do it in a way that aligns with the way we're saying it. And that most people's negative perceptions of us are born out of either negative experiences, which darn well better not be us representing, or second or third hand stories of others' negative experiences that, as always, never let the truth get in the way of a good story, have been embellished over time, and away we go. So, Mr. Deng's summary view was, we don't want one of those things here in the People's Republic of China. My experience as a personification of what I communicated to you in that video is that when you listen, when you give some positive feedback, when you use the 3 F's, different 3 F's of, I can understand how you feel, I would feel the same way, but I have found, found, that this is the way that maybe another way to look at it or another perspective to take. You can even begin to change the perspective and the opinion and the relationship with the Vice Minister of Commerce in the People's Republic of China, even when he thinks you are the thundering Hun coming over the wall to take his country. So if I can do that, little old me sitting at that table in fear and trembling, if I can do that with him, then I'm sure with practice and in time you can do that with them. Have a great day.